Bounce back time for the Nittany Lions. Trey Bauer so distraught, not with us. So in the center square, Jay Paterno.
There are easier places to bounce back from a tough loss in East Lansing, but it's going to be a stiff challenge. We'll see if the Nittany Lions are up for it.
Perhaps Mike Gesicki said it best about 30 minutes after the loss. It's a 1-point setback at the Horseshoe. There's no reason to panic. We are a calming presence here on the Blue-White Tailgate. Next.
Most points scored by an opponent against Ohio State in the Horseshoe in 5 years, and still not quite enough, as Penn State fell 39-38. Steve Jones, Jay Paterno, Todd Sadowski, all points bulletin for Trey Bauer. All right, guys, just quick opening thoughts on that, and then we'll get into a little bit later in the show about not allowing a game to beat you twice.
Well, disappointing in that when you looked at all the keys of the game that we talked about, turnover margin, getting out early, all those things, all the replays seem to go Penn State's way. It's frustrating when you come out of a game like that and you don't quite get the win, but with the playoff, there's a lot to play for.
Yeah, and it says right here, is this a disappointing loss? That's what we're supposed to talk about? Yeah, you're darn right it's a disappointing loss. You put up 38 points at the Horseshoe. You're 2-10 at the place. Going there on the road, you do all the right things to get that lead and just can't hold it. There's a lot of reasons why that happened, though. So, yes, it's a disappointing loss, but it's, you know, look, it got away from you. That's what happens sometimes in college football. That's what happens in life sometimes, right, guys?
I mean, they checked all the boxes in terms of keys to game. Must do this, must do it. They did them all.
Yep.
It still came up 1 point, and J.T. Barrett was great. Not good, he was great.
That's one of the best fourth quarters I've ever seen a quarterback play in a lot of years of watching football. You go 13 for 13, 170 yards and 3 touchdowns.
Yeah.
And the out throw he made on that last touchdown drive with a guy in his face, you can't be tougher, you can't make a better throw and put it anywhere better.
There was a football sage that many, many years ago pulled me aside and said, Steve, remember sometimes when things aren't going well for Penn State, sometimes because the other guy's doing something right? Who was that sage? Do you know that sage?
I had no idea.
Did you know him?
No idea. It wasn't me. I know that.
Yeah, I knew that. No, I'm just kidding, Jay. I have to have some fun with it. All right, so let's get to James Franklin. Look, obviously, this is a tough one in the locker room to deal with.
Obviously very disappointed for the guys in the locker room. We still got a lot of football ahead of us. As we saw how everything played out last year, this is a crazy game with a lot of different storylines, and you know, more than anything, I'm hurting for those kids in that locker room, but we didn't finish. You know, we had an opportunity. You know, I thought we played good, but obviously not good enough.
Kish Bank momentum moment illustrates that. Penn State took over the ball at the 42 of Ohio State on a Sharif Miller fumble recovery. And then they couldn't get it done. 3 and out, Denzel Ward with the block punt. On a day, guys, where Penn State made all the special teams plays, they finally gave up 1.
Well, it was ironic that a blocked kick came into play in this particular rivalry. So many of the things that happened last year happened to them this year at the Horseshoe. When they're ahead, they've got the momentum, and then a block kick, they get in there and they turn things around. I'm not so sure they were going to keep them from scoring again anyway if they get the kick away. But, boy, you make it a lot tougher when you give them a longer field.
But here's the other part, though, guys. You start at the 42-yard line. You're going in on their 42, where Penn State is a 67% scoring team on the plus side of the field. Would have made it a 3-score game. Ohio State would not have picked up 3 scores in that period of time to win the game. So, at least in my opinion, the way the game was played out and where the clock was. Time now for our PSECU game break update. And with that, Allison Luthman.
Hey guys, welcome to your PSECU pregame update, bringing you everything you need to know before kickoff this Saturday. Penn State's 15-game win streak was snapped as they fell 38-39 against Ohio State, but those 38 points were the most a Penn State team has scored against Ohio State since they scored 63 points in 1994. Saquon Barkley has scored a touchdown in 15 straight games. This is now the longest active streak in FBS and also a Penn State record. Linebacker Koa Farmer recovered his first career fumble in the first quarter and returned it 26 yards to set up Deshaun Hamilton's touchdown. Farmer also had a career high of 2 tackles for loss, topping his previous best of 1.5 during this year's Pitt game. That's been your PSECU pregame update. We'll see you Saturday.
All right, thanks so much, Allison. Let's take a look at the college football playoff standings. The initial poll came out Tuesday night. Any quick thoughts from either one of you?
Well, I think, with Penn State losing this game, it's a lot like the wild card in baseball. More people are in it. There are still, by my count, 13 teams that are in the hunt for those 4 playoff spots. A lot of things to do yet this season.
The most important thing to do is just keep winning. And I think the danger is you can't worry about blowing out Michigan State or you got to style points. Just win the game. Get out of East Lansing with a victory and worry about it later on. One thing I did like is I like to see Georgia in front of Alabama at this point because they have more quality wins, and Oklahoma in front of Ohio State because they beat them at the Horseshoe and they should be in front.
And Jason Kabinda echoes your sentiment, Todd, about winning the game.
But for me, it's all again a dub. I can care less about the trophy. For me, it's about winning. That's what I care about. If I want to be completely honest.
And that's what it's all about. And now the series. The series has been actually a really good series. Moving this game off the end of the year, Jay, I don't like that. I think they had a pretty good thing going at the end of the year.
Well, the first couple of years, Penn State was dominating the series in the Big Ten. And then Michigan State under D'Antonio has kind of risen up, and it's become, there is some back and forth now between the two. I think it's too bad.
Yeah, I mean, that's one thing. They've been messing around with the schedule. It's going to be Maryland the end of the year this year and then next year. Then they got Rutgers, I think, 3 or 4 times in a row they're going to play at the end of the year. See, that's the problem. Who do you pair Rutgers up with? That's a problem.
Yeah.
All right, we'll come back. We'll settle all the problems of the world after this. Welcome back. Great to have you with us. It's an opportunity now for us to talk about something that always becomes important once you go through a loss, and that is don't let a big game where you didn't win beat you twice. Jason Kabinda says the players, Trace McSorley, Saquon Barkley, got together on their own because they're trying to avoid that as well.
Yeah, I mean, we just felt like, there were some things we had to kind of get off our chest. And, just making sure that the mentality of the team was the same. We were still taking the same approach and knowing that, there's a ton still, left for us. A ton of football left, a lot still left to be accomplished. So kind of just reiterating those things, really.
And sometimes, guys, along the way, a head coach will make a suggestion like, hey, once you have players, these guys did it on their own. What does that tell you as a coach, Jay, when the players take it upon themselves, say, hey, look, let's like draw a line here?
Well, it tells you got some good leadership, and I think, these players don't have to look very far for an example of what can happen. I mean, if Penn State wins out, Ohio State loses one game, Ohio State can still win the Big Ten. Penn State at 11-1 could go to the playoff, while Ohio State can complain about the fact that they're conference champs. So it would be kind of fun to see those tables turn, and I think they know that. And I think, the only way to get that done is keep winning. You
made reference to leadership, Jay, and look, you don't look any farther than Florida State. They lost that first game. Right. They're looking for leaders on that team. That season completely collapsed for the Seminoles, for a team that was supposed to be really, really good. And I was on the field level. We got out of the way because we knew the fans were going to storm the field. Right. But Saquon Barkley came up the tunnel, didn't even make it halfway, turned around and talked to some of his teammates. It's not over yet. Let's go. We got to go back to work tomorrow. The coaches talk about corrections the next day and then moving on and moving on. Well, you can only do that if the players also do that with you and they take the right mind frame. And I think this is the kind of group that can do that.
What kind of read during the week, Jay, would you look for to see if your team was thinking the way you were thinking?
Well, you go out that first practice and see if there's any bounce, if there's any excitement, any joy. And I think they'll have it. I think there's no question they'll have it. In 1999, we lost a really tough one to Minnesota. And there was everybody in town was mourning because we couldn't win the national championship anymore in their minds. And I think that kind of crept into our psyche. In 2005, we lost a tough game and won the rest of them. In 2008, we lost a tough game in Iowa, won the rest of them. And that was really the players kept saying there's still a lot to play for. And I think with the playoff, now that we didn't have an 05 and 08, it creates more incentive.
I can tell both of you, and I'll tell you as well, they had the bounce.
Yep.
I've seen it already. I mean, they came out, boom, ready to go. That told me a lot when I watched that this week.
Yeah, no doubt. And it doesn't surprise me. Like I said, the leadership is great. And one of the things I liked about Coach Franklin is he took ownership right away with it after the game. And then on his weekly press conference on Tuesday, typically there's a quick review and you start talking about the next opponent. He gave a detailed review about what they learned from the Ohio State game and what they needed to work on. And one of the real takeaways from the game with Ohio State, we could talk about the play calling at the end of the game. They could have, I personally feel like they should have went to Gesicki down on the goal line, get as many points as you can, all those types of things. But they're closing the gap. And when you're comparing yourself and you're coming close to Urban Meyer's program, and then there's Nick Saban's program, you're getting closer and closer. They were hammered at the shoe a couple of years ago, and then they lost by 1. So this program is making strides, leaps and bounds.
They're 16-2 in their last 18 games. The 2 losses, look, when the Rose Bowl is 8 miles away, it's a road game. Their 2 losses are on the road by a total of 4 points. So the margin is like that. And where Penn State's had the margin where Wisconsin couldn't close on them, where Iowa couldn't close on them, where Michigan or Ohio State last year couldn't close them, because Ohio State was trying to close the game last year, couldn't do it, right? So Penn State's done that to other teams, and when it's that close, sometimes it happens to you. You don't want it to happen to you, but sometimes it does.
Yeah, there are very few gimmies anymore in the world of college football. And to go out and say we're going to beat this team by 30, it doesn't happen anymore because you have guys that are playing. They're 18 to 22. They got things going on. They got family issues. They got a lot of stuff going on in their lives, more than we can even imagine. So they're going to have ups and downs. And if you can get those down games and steal them. And then you almost stole the one in the horseshoe. You got yourself. This is a good football team, and how good they'll be, we're going to find out in the next couple of weeks.
And everyone was talking about how complete Penn State was, and they are for the most part. But the fatal flaw is the 4-minute offense is trying to finish. What makes them great and so exciting and so explosive offensively also comes back to bite them at the end of the game. And sometimes it takes these painful defeats, the painful setbacks, to learn exactly, okay, we got to learn from this, and we can't let this happen again. So how do we rectify that situation if we're there again?
See, I think that's the next step in the aging process. When you've got a redshirt freshman at tackle, probably should be breaking in right now. Although Bates, I think, as I told you guys earlier, I think Bates will be playing regardless. But a true sophomore at center and so forth. I think one of the best closings I ever saw Penn State have in my time, and it's a really underrated game, was that Tennessee game where Hunt got the ball how many times in a row? That's closing a game.
Yeah, in downhill.
Right, downhill with a veteran line and a veteran running back.
Against an SEC team that doesn't like to mix it up. I almost got in the Trey territory there. Almost did. I did.
I think it's something about that Trey. But look, that's not the way this team is built, right? So this team has to figure out how they can finish. And I think that's with short, safe passes. Look, running the ball doesn't kill the clock, guys. Getting first downs kills the clock.
Exactly. Coming up, we'll take a look at that Nittany Lion offense, how they performed during the course of the day. A couple of things along the way that James Franklin would like to see as they head into the final 4 games of the regular season as we continue after this. 31 of the 38 points scored by the Nittany Lions were on the offense. The kickoff return, obviously, the other 7 points for Penn State during the course of this game. Our family clothesline player of the week, the quarterback, Trace McSorley. And Jay, there is something within him that makes plays.
Look, I've said this, and I've gotten people that looked at me like I was crazy, but I'll say it. The last 4 or 5 weeks, the real MVP of this offense has been Trace McSorley. People are trying to take Barkley away. He's thrown the ball well enough. He's made runs with his feet. Not that he's the best player, but he's been the guy that has been the linchpin of all the things that have happened offensively.
His stats weren't as good as they've been in other games. He was tremendous on Saturday just to avoid the rush and get himself in a position to actually make a throw. Look at that smart decision there to reach the ball across. I mean, it's a joy to watch him play football. And, with his feet, just getting himself in a position to throw it. They're going to need him again this week, in East Lansing, because they're going to do the same thing. They're going to stack the box and try and stop Saquon Barkley.
And he helped engineer our Joel Comfer Drive of the Week, brought to you by good friends at Joel Comfer. It was a 7-play, 81-yard drive for the Nittany Lions, the third drive of the game. So for those of you who didn't think Penn State drove the ball all day, they had a couple of 70-yard drives in this game, including this one here. And, Jay, it's well executed, smart what they did.
Yeah, and you're getting short passes, getting the ball out. When you play a team that rushes the passer like Ohio State does, one thing you don't want to do is stand there and hold it. And with his feet and with his mobility, he was able to get out and make some things happen.
And that's where you look at the later in the game and you say, this is the kind of plays. These are the kind of plays to kill the clock, to finish off a team like Ohio State when you want to play and continue to play aggressively. And, Urban Meyer paid Trace McSorley a tremendous compliment and actually compared him to Tim Tebow earlier in the week before this game. And that's a pretty high compliment when you're talking about college football players.
Yeah, but Trace can hit the fastball and the curveball.
I'll tell you, Tebow's not a bad player.
Not bad, not a bad baseball player.
Not bad. He got a little bit better as time went along this year. I got to give him credit for that. But you talk about change your personality. You'd like certain things, quote, idealistically, you'd like to do, Jay, but at the same time, you got to do with what you have personnel-wise.
Yeah, and I think as everybody wants to line up and run the football and kill the clock, but at some point, people can take away something. I mean, nobody is that good offensively that you can't take something away from them. So you try and make them play left-handed. Well, fortunately, our left hand is McSorley in the pass game. Yep. McSorley with his feet. Even the field goal drive in the fourth quarter, he had a 23, 24-yard run that really sparked that thing. Yep. So he's a guy that can win games for you.
Well, you mentioned taking away something, and Allison Luthman is about to tell us that Saquon Barkley shouldn't wear 26. He should just wear a target.
Saquon Barkley's day on Saturday did start promisingly with the biggest play of the game as the first play, a 97-yard kickoff return for a touchdown, shortly followed by a 36-yard touchdown run. But Ohio State's defense was able to put a stop to him shortly after that. They held him to 24 touches, 20 runs, and 4 catches, totaling to just 31 yards. Franklin explains what Ohio State was able to do.
It's very similar to what we've been seeing all year long, but they're doing it with really good athletes. They're extremely explosive, extremely athletic, and a lot of similar schemes that we've been seeing all year long.
Ohio State did end the game with 13 tackles for loss, totaling to 49 yards, while Penn State ended with 6 tackles for loss, totaling to 25. Guys.
Thank you so much, Allison. Appreciate that. Really good points along the way. And, let's take a look at Barkley's numbers to this point, because they've had a big eye on him. Run production since the Iowa game. You're talking about 3.9 yards a carry. There's been some big plays in there, but also, but this is where he comes into play in the pass game. Right. The pass game is what changes all of that, right?
Yeah, but even in the pass game, people have started to keep an eye on him, which has opened some things for some other people.
Right.
But, the challenge is going to be, can they get him loose? Can they get him consistent? Because there's a lot of losses. There's a lot of tackles for losses, and that gets you off schedule, and that's not easy.
Yeah, Jay, there were 13, in fact, in this game. Not all on Barkley, but 13 tackles.
Well, he had 21 carries. He gained 80 yards, guys. He lost 36 on the other carries, so that made his net only 44 yards for the game. And you mentioned, can they stop him in the passing game? Ohio State can. I'm not so sure anybody else can. I mean, you got to have the personnel to match up with him from a linebacker standpoint. He was wide open against Michigan almost the entire night. So against the Spartans, I think they will be able to get Barkley loose in the passing game, and that's a key to spark that offense, because from the rushing game, it's been very inconsistent.
So let's take a look at the tail of the tape, the Penn State offense and the Michigan State defense. Michigan State's offensive numbers are about the same as last year, but their defensive numbers are better, especially that rush number right there of 90 yards per game right there. That's a big number.
Yeah, we're going to talk about that in the film room a little bit, about not just the yards per game, but yards per carry, yards per play. Every defensive category, they've gotten much, much better.
Yeah,
that's going to be a challenge.
But you can throw the ball. And it's the odd thing about it.
That's always been them.
Right. You know what? They don't sack the quarterback a lot.
No, and usually with the rush defenses like that, you've got a lot of sack yardage.
Right, and they've had a lot of talent, Steve, in the secondary in the past. They've moved a lot of guys on to the NFL. But look, J.T. Barrett proved it. I mean, 7-on-7, you can barely complete 13 out of 13 in the fourth quarter.
I've tried, believe me.
Right, when a quarterback is hot, when a quarterback is red hot, you're just not going to stop him. And I just think that's when you have Trace McSorley, and he's typically very accurate. In college football, you got a good quarterback that can throw the ball. You're going to be able to move the ball on teams. What I've been impressed with Penn State guys all year long is how often they score touchdowns compared to field goals. I mean, they plug it in the end zone. They finish drives.
Right. They certainly do finish drives. And then the other part, you look at Michigan State, their MO over the years when they had great defenses was they had great corners, which allowed them to unleash the hounds with the other 9 guys. That's not the case with them anymore.
No, I think 22, and we'll talk about this a little bit, I think 22's got that ability. I think their field corner is not as good. But, you know, their whole defense is structured on we're not going to let you run the ball. We're going to make you throw the ball, lower percentage plays, and Penn State can make them. Now, I think the weather's going to be a little dicey out there, which, you know, changes the math of this game a little bit, but we'll see.
Oh, don't bring up math out with this group. Hey, wait till we get to the picks. That's where the math goes really squirrely. Coming up, we'll take a look at the Nittany Lion defense as we continue with Blue White Tailgate after this. They did a good job for the most part in the Ohio State running game. They did a good job for the most part on the receivers, coverage-wise. But some days you cannot beat a guy that hits 16 in a row and is having the game of his life.
Well, you know, watching the game, there were times that ball left his hands.
Yeah.
And you had to look twice to see, did it get to that guy for Ohio State, and did he catch it? And yes, they did. I mean, there was some just head scratchers.
Yeah, no doubt about it. And you could see Jason Kabinda shaking his head as he walked off the field, and understandably so.
Yeah.
I mean, they continued to put pressure on him all day long. It's a dynamic offense, and you know, lest we forget, Urban Meyer was coming off a bye week, so they were able to throw and examine, take an extra week to dissect Penn State's defense, do all kinds of things to him that they wanted to. He's only lost 1 time coming off a bye week.
Yeah, that was Ben Roethlisberger in Miami of Ohio when he was at Bowling Green.
We'll give him a pass on that one.
Long time ago.
But let's take a look at, by the way, trend bucked here as we look at this. And you can see what Penn State did in the game, what they did in the season, what they gave up. But there's another part, too, about, we always talk about going on the road. Crowd noise. Let's pump in lots of crowd noise. You got to flip it around. J.T. Barrett, what couldn't he do in the double overtime game at Penn State, and what couldn't he do last year at Penn State? He couldn't call out any checks. He got to the line of scrimmage. You were down there when they were on offense. It was like church.
Yeah.
You could call out whatever you want. It makes a big difference with a veteran.
Massive, massive home field advantage for sure. And, you know, I was down there, unfortunately, for the 4th quarter. And, boy, you could feel the momentum swinging as well. And it was really just a perfect storm of circumstances where the defense was tired. You know, the offense couldn't keep the ball. And I think one of the main things that Ohio State did to Penn State's defense is they kept them on the field. You could not substitute that up-tempo. They were gassed by the time they hit the red zone, and they had their hands on their hips. One of the best timeouts of the game, Coach Franklin called just to give his team a rest so they could defend their turf because they were helpless. And I believe that might have been the 3rd quarter. I can't remember if it was early in the 4th, but he needed to call timeout just to give those guys a breather and a chance to defend their own end zone.
Yeah, we pointed that out in the broadcast the second he called it. He called it just to like slow it down and stop it. Family Clothesline Defensive Player of the Week, brought to you by our good friends at the Family Clothesline, PennStateClothes.com. It is Koa Farmer. He came up with a few big plays in this game. It's probably the best all-around game he's played here at Penn State.
And let's not forget the kickoff return he almost took out.
Yeah.
You know, I kept saying, would you pitch it to a faster guy because they're catching you? But he didn't. But he was really a lot of different places in the right time.
Yeah, and I think this was a game made for a linebacker like Koa Farmer, where you've got speedy athletes all over the field. You're asked to cover. You're asked to get to J.T. Barrett, and he answered the bell right away. He made an impact immediately.
He looks at me and says, I was second in all-purpose yards. Okay. Tied down for, again, at least the guys have a little sense of humor what's going on, okay? It's like, this is not everybody in depression mode and the cone of silence is over the plane like in the old Get Smart days. Tale of the tape, the Penn State defense and the Michigan State offense. Lewerke's changed the pass game, but their offensive numbers overall are not what they were, actually about the same as last year. But, Jay, Cody White being added in, we're going to get into this later, but he's coming off a 165-yard, 2-touchdown performance against Northwestern.
Well, I think their wideouts are going to be, and we'll talk about it a little bit more, but when you look at them, they are a different team offensively right now than they were last year because they got a quarterback that's making some good decisions. They've got a guy that can run himself out of trouble and get the ball downfield. So it's going to be a challenge.
It's an interesting team, isn't it? They're always like situationally strong, and they just, somehow they get the ball down the field, or they get the big field goal, and they knocked off Michigan this year. They took care of Iowa 17-10. Michigan State's like that stereotypical Big Ten team to do just enough to work that record and get the key victories when they need them. And they just couldn't get the job done at Northwestern. Yeah. No surprise, Northwestern making a run at the end of the year, right?
Absolutely.
But there's the other part, too. They window dress what they do. They do a lot of moving around. 67 plays this year that are either, quote, in the trick play or unbalanced line or 6 linemen. So that's 8 a game that they do.
And they've always been that way. They're a change of pace. They're a package offense in terms of we're going to line up this way, and we'll get into this in the film room, Todd, where you motion the guy and you give it to him. Then you motion, you fake it to him, and you give it to the tailback. And then it's a lot of things for your linebackers to look at during the course of the week. And in 1 week, it's a challenge to get ready for all that.
They're also really not okay in the red zone. 77%. They're 13th in the Big Ten in the red zone. But Jason Cabinda says a big part of the game, any game, they got to handle sudden change better.
I mean, those situations are always tough, obviously, sudden change, whether it's an interception, a blocked kick, or just some type of turnover on downs, any type of unfortunate situation. A lot of times you put in bad field position and you are asking to make a stand, but I mean, we got to make that stand. As simple as that.
Yeah, and that's exactly right. You got to do that because, even you look at the Michigan game, for example, there was a sudden change and Michigan scored off of that. So that's why you're not just looking at one game, you're looking at multiple games.
It's one of the first things Coach Franklin mentioned in his post-game press conference was they had to handle that situation a little better. So they've addressed it in the workouts this week.
Well, the film room is coming up, and in the film room, Todd and Jay, in a vote of 2-1, have voted me off the island. They'll come back and take you into the film room in a moment on Blue White Tailgate.
We are back on the Blue White Tailgate, and we're in the film room. It's brought to you by Beer, Belly's Beverage. And Jay, I hope you had a good Halloween. I would have to say the fourth quarter at the Horseshoe was more like the horror at the Horseshoe. It was really, things just went downhill south for the guys. But they bounced back from that. Now they've got Michigan State. And oh, surprise, it's built around the defense, isn't it, for the Spartans?
Well, if you look at what's the difference between Michigan State's their team last year and this year, it's defense. So let's take a look at the numbers. When you look at yards per game rushing, they've dramatically improved. Yards per rush, yards per pass, overall yards per play. Those are national ranks there. You're looking at a defense that knows how to play. And how do they do that? Let's take a look at what they do. It starts with tackling. This is the team, the longest run they've given up is 31 yards this year. The longest pass is 45 yards, and that comes with tackling. And take a look. Here's an example where you see often big plays. You got a guy clearing out, guy running the crossing route, and watch how effectively they tackle in the open field. Take a look here at this video. Here's Michigan on a crossing route. Guy comes off from playing downfield, comes up, makes a tackle, gains almost nothing. Now, let's talk about their base defense. And much like Ohio State, they're going to play aggressively on the outside. They're going to play with 3 linebackers in their base set against your 3 wideout set, and they're going to tackle. This guy's really a hybrid. He plays run first, plays pass. And this guy gets matched up in the safety. So your slot receiver and Gesicki should have big days, or they're going to need to have some big days in the pass game. Take a look at them on defense here, and you'll see their guy in the slot plays run first, comes out to play the pass. They come over, they're aggressive, they hit you, and they're on you. They play good defense. Now, their blitz scheme is different than most people. They're going to run 6-man pressures. And when 6-man pressures occur with most teams, you're playing man-to-man behind it with your 5 guys. They'll run 6-man pressures and play 2 deep, 3 deep, 2 underneath, which is unusual, but they've been doing it for years. It's a D'Antonio staple, and you've got to be able to throw the ball, pick up the blitz, and throw the ball. But then once you do, they rally to it. And this is, again, here's a blitz where they're going to run the inside A-gaps, going to give some problems in the run game, but also react to pass. Take a look at how they play this. And you see that backside safety comes down to play shallow. They throw the ball, and he's right there to make a tackle for 5 yards. Again, very sure tacklers. They will also play some man-to-man when they come with these blitzes. And again, very aggressive on the outside. Going to force your receivers to get off the bump, force them to make plays down the field, and then, again, they will match up. So if you took took Barkley out in the empty sets, you will get a linebacker on him. You'll see that with this motion. Michigan's going to take a running back out. Their corners are still going to stay matched up with their wideouts, and this guy's going to go to the middle field to play. So take a look at that. You're going to see the blitz come. Again, ends up being a 5-man pressure, man-free behind it, and again, very aggressive, very physical. Now, they do throw in some hot blitzes, and here what ends up being just a 4-man blitz, 4-man rush, but they bring 2 outside the tackle, which creates a hot situation. Most of the times when you get hot blitzes, you're getting a 3-deep look behind it, and you get a nice easy throw to get the ball out. But here they're going to rotate to 2 deep, take away the easy throw. Take a look at what happens here. They take away the easy throw from you, and now here comes the blitz. He's hot. There's nowhere to go with it. Now he scrambles, ends up throwing it away. Again, they force him to punt on a 3rd down.
All right, let's make the transition to the offense, and they like that traditional power run game. They want to move the ball in small chunks on you.
They want to control the tempo of the game. And one of the things they do is they give a lot of packages. They start with a power run game. Here you have 2 tight ends. You're going to pull the center, which is not easy. A lot of people don't do that. Kick out and get north and south. Let's take a look at the video here. Again, not real fancy. It is downhill. It is kick out. It is man up. It's big boy football. And again, that's a 14-yard play, and they're elated with that because they've moved the chains. Now, again, we talked about Lewerke during the course of the broadcast today. Here's an example where they got some designed run plays for him. And again, pulling the center, pulling the guard, faking it to that tailback in the power run game, him keeping it, and take a look at how effective a runner he is. He's very good scrambling, very good getting out of the pocket, but when they call the runs for him, he's a bigger kid, 6'3", 215, 220. Now, the other thing they like to do is they like play action passes. And again, off that same idea where they're going to pull somebody, show you the run fake, get your linebackers playing downhill and throw it over the top. Let's take a look at this one here. Now they throw this to 25, who's a real good player for him and has done some good things for him. Their wideouts are good. Number 7's emerged as a real good guy, big, tall guys. Here they're going to take 25. Now another package. You're going to get him the ball in the jet sweep. Motion him out, get you to adjust. Motion him back in, snap the ball, fake it to tailback, and off he goes. We'll take a look at it again. I think he's carried the ball now 17 times on the year, averaging about 8 yards per carry in the run game for them. And but one of the things they do is they create really good packages. Here they're going to take the same thing with 25. Instead of on the jet sweep, they're going to fake him on the reverse, fake the ball to tailback, and after that reverse, you've got everybody running all over the place, and they're going to throw a screen to this tailback coming off the fake. Take a look there. Again, a lot of things for your linebackers to look at, a lot of things they've got to see with motions, formations, a lot of window dressing. Going to be a big challenge for Penn State's linebackers.
You got Rutgers, Nebraska, and Maryland to finish off. This one's probably the biggest hurdle left against the Spartans. We'll see how they can do.
Absolutely.
All right, we'll be back on the set with Steve coming up after this.
Well, Michigan State, I think as Todd mentioned earlier, is that look, they don't wow you, they just win. And to their credit, they have bounced back from what was really a bad season for them last year, and they've put together a good season so far, really good.
Yeah, well, I was talking to Glenn Mason when he was up for wanting to do one of the Penn State games. And it was early in the year, and I said, Michigan State seems different when I watch him. And he said, talking to D'Antonio and Jim Bowman, some of the guys' staff, they really like their team. They feel like they've gotten this thing back to what it is, and you can kind of sense that.
I kind of equate it to what Notre Dame went through last year. Both of them had those down years. I think both coaches kind of reassessed, how are we handling this group of kids? How do we approach that? And they got them back on track for this particular year. And Coach D'Antonio's got a great track record. He's won some Big Ten championships in recent years, got his team to the college football playoff. And this guy's a successful guy entering his 11th season at Michigan State.
I mean, you can see right there what they've done, 3 Big Ten championships. I mean, they've done very well under him, and I do not discount the players that are no longer there, because you can have addition by subtraction, Jay, in the locker room when you get rid of certain elements.
It seems like that's the case with them. It seems like they are disciplined. They are back to the things that made them really, really good. Hard-nosed, playing good defense, going to the football. I think their longest run they've given up this year is 31 yards. That speaks to team defense. Yeah,
it's hard to imagine how they lost some of those games last year. I mean, those are mysteries, some of the teams that they lost to, coming off a good year the year before. But, Steve, as you mentioned, it's this year's group, 2017, 2016 is over.
And what's helped him now, after having a transition from Connor Cook leaving, Brian Lewerke has now stepped in And he is a difference maker in what they do because he keeps plays alive and keeps them out of trouble.
Well, I think the thing is for Penn State fans, and this isn't going to help you rest any easier, but much like Ohio State, this is a team that has the ability to run the ball and throw the ball, and a quarterback that can get out of trouble. And last week was the first time we really saw a team that could do those things, and this is another one of those things, and it's on the road. And I'm telling you, having coached at East Lansing a few times, you can never take anything for granted out there. There's been some wild things happen out there.
And when it comes to pre-snap, Jason Cabinda says they have to be smart about how they play it.
I think the quarterback right now is playing better. I think it's his first year starting, but he's having a good year. He's playing well. So he's definitely a guy we're going to have to watch out for and make sure we're disguised and playing with a ton of personality so we can't peg us pre-snap. So.
You got to be smart about it. L.J. Scott is a good running back. I think I want to go to something, Jay, you mentioned earlier, the size of their receivers, and Cody White now is a true freshman coming on.
Yeah, that's going to be – they are big, tall guys. We talked about in the film room how the matchup problems and the ways they use them, and that's going to be something to watch Saturday.
Yeah, he was co-freshman of the week. I feel bad for Lewerke. If it wasn't for J.T. Barrett, he would have been the Big Ten Offensive Player of the Week. Guy threw for over 440 yards, 475 in total offense. So not only do you have a guy who's very McSorley-ish, I would say, a guy can make some plays with his feet, and he's starting to throw the ball accurately. He's coming into this game hot, and they're at home. It's a 12 noon kickoff. I mean, look, there are some things that are alarming for Penn State to go there. This is the third week in that 3-week gauntlet, second time going back on the road after a road loss. So there are definitely some trip-up things here you got to look out for if you're Penn State.
But it's also not like they're not coming off an emotional loss. It's a triple overtime game. They really, and to be honest with you, it's a game. I mean, I know they scored at the end in regulation to put it into overtime, but you watch the tape up and down, up and down. They kept shooting themselves in the foot.
Well, 2 field goals off the uprights. I mean, I've seen 1 in a game, but not 2. I mean, you got to try hard to do that. But you had a fumble inside the 10 and 2 field goals hit the uprights. Otherwise, they win that game by 13-14 in regulation.
And this is their stretch. Look, they got 2 losses. They're almost out of the top 25.
Right.
They've got Penn State at home, and then they've got at Ohio State next week. This is their season to see what kind of year they're going to have in the next couple of weeks. They're going to try and pick off at least one of these next 2 teams. They already knocked out Michigan.
And Todd, there's that running game defense we talked about earlier. We showed the numbers earlier. That's their calling card. They try to get you as a one-dimensional team.
Well, and they have looked at the film of what Indiana's done, what Ohio State has done, and they're going to try and just look. We're going to attack that run-pass option in the backfield, go get both Trace and Saquon Barkley and see what they can do. So the adjustments on Coach Moorhead and Penn State, what can they do differently in the run game to make it effective?
Chris Fry, Joe Bacci, Andrew Dowell, 3 really good linebackers that James Franklin respects.
Their linebackers, I think, are the difference makers on their defense. The Bacci guy, if I'm pronouncing it correct, is obviously very productive at middle linebacker, but really the whole unit plays well.
And they do play well. Secondary is good. Kari Willis is probably their best guy back there. You like 22 a lot.
22, I think, is good. Bacci is Italian bowling, as we know, and Bacci plays like a bowling ball downhill. And he's not the small Pauline ball. He's the big ball, and he's going to be somebody in the run game who's going to have a big impact in this game.
I mean, great downhill linebacker, not good in space. You look at him, gets lost. G block next. All right, so now it's time for the Land Grant Trophy. I'm sorry. That's the one thing that Penn State, when they got into this conference, let's have a couple trophy games. No offense, Jay. I think they're ridiculous.
Well, this thing weighs about 3 tons. It's ugly. I don't know who designed it. Guido DeLay, at one time we were trying to come up, he was working with people at Michigan State to try and come up with something new. It didn't happen. The loser should have to take the trophy home. That's the way I feel.
Well, beauty is in the eye of the beholder. The beholder at the moment is James Franklin.
It's I think what makes it so beautiful is how unorthodox it is. It's not your normal trophy. It's unique. It's unorthodox. It's cool.
That's about as politically correct as you can be. The thing is ugly. It's the ugly baby.
Yeah.
Oh, your baby is it's beautiful.
Right.
breathtaking.
Yeah.
Look, win the game. I don't care what they give you.
Exactly.
That's the only beauty.
Can't we get a Paul Bunyan? I mean, that
The
thing's
only
cool.
beauty in it is if you own it. Okay,
Yeah, that's
And
right.
That
That's
means
exactly
you won
right.
the
It's
thing,
your baby.
And Coach Franklin's tongue is bleeding right now, trying to hold that tongue to what he really wanted to say about it. So.
Time now for the good, the bad, and the ugly. You're going to get the good, Jay, because Trey's out. So
Hey, I'm
it's
gonna go
amazing
with
how
the
you
good.
get the Trey's out, we give him the good.
That's right.
CBS's Dennis Dodd was out at Iowa State and took a photo of a list of things they want from their players, saying please, thank you, yes sir, yes ma'am, excuse me, those kind of things that are social graces that, you know what, that's not a bad idea. And back in the 50s and 60s, Jimbo Hora used to take the freshmen at Penn State and teach them where the fork, knife, and all those things went. So, that's good.
Manners is back.
Absolutely.
Bad. When you look at the NFL right now, and I watch a guy for the Chargers take a punt at the 18 and then get a safety, right? You wonder why they're going backwards in the ratings and why college football is going forward in the ratings. I mean, college football, at least, I'm watching Oregon State, Stanford. They threw a pass to the guard. He got it down to the 2-yard line. The NFL would never even think of doing something like that. College football's fun.
Yeah, a little bit more entertaining. Okay, I'm going to go with the ugly. It's not quite really ugly yet, but it could be. The college football playoff rankings came out. You've got 2 teams from the same conference, 1 and 2, Notre Dame and Independent in there, and then one from one of the Power 5 conferences, Clemson. If it ends that way, and you got 3 Power Conference champions sitting at home going to some other bowl game, whoo, it's going to get real ugly real quick because the commissioners are going to go, what did we sign up for? We signed up for this to be left out in the cold.
Right, but you know what?
Could get ugly.
You know what's interesting there? People will look at Clemson losing at Syracuse. Penn State lost by 1 at Ohio State. But they did win Virginia Tech conference game, and they beat Auburn. And that's the perception thing I tried to point out the second week of the season. If you're going to beat a blue blood from the SEC, that counts more than a middle-of-the-road ACC team.
No question.
Fair?
No question.
I'm talking perception here. I'm not saying who's better.
To get to Todd's scenario, let's say Georgia and Alabama are undefeated, and they get the SEC championship game, and Georgia wins by 1 or loses by 1. Notre Dame's there with 1 loss.
It's very possible.
It's entirely possible, and I'll pull my hair out. Trey will really pull his hair out if there's 2 SEC teams in a Notre Dame.
We're going to have to hold a special.
Time for the picks. Here we go. Let's rev it up. Time for the picks brought to you by Number 1 Cycle Center. All right, I get to go first. Well, wow.
Because you are in first.
Opening the lead. Look at that.
I have no idea who I'm picking. Clemson and NC State. NC State lost it, and they finally threw an interception, by the way. Clemson's defense is really, really good, and they're going to have to be good in this environment. I'm going to go with Clemson in this game.
All right.
All right, Todd, you're next.
I get LSU, Alabama. It's Bama. Ed Orgeron delivers this game.
You got right to the point.
That's right.
Great analysis.
Yes, you got it.
Virginia Tech, Miami. I'm going to go Virginia Tech, and I think this might be big. I think Miami has. You look. Virginia Tech played UNC 2 weeks ago, won by 48. Miami struggled. Miami's just by the skin of their teeth.
Miami's best win Toledo this year.
Yep.
Yeah, Miami's best win Toledo so
Virginia
far.
Tech's a little better than they are.
Time for keys to the game. I get to go first. I think getting out of the gate and washing everything away, I think that's a big part of this. Get out of the gate first.
I think turnovers is going to be huge if Penn State gets them, because if Michigan State doesn't, this can be a long afternoon and they can win the game.
Saquon Barkley in the passing game. Got to get him involved. I think there's some matchups there where you can do it. Got to give him the ball.
Yeah, I just think it's so important to get this thing in your rearview mirror. I think they've been doing that at practice, but when the game starts, that's when you know for sure you've got it in the rearview mirror. It's a big November for them. It's a big November for them. They're right there at number 7. All right, thanks for joining us here on the Blue White Tailgate Show.